Welcome back to Man versus Machine. Bradley and Wyatt running it back here on the Player Profiler Now Plus Network. Wyatt and I are going to crack down on these quarterbacks. You know, it's sometimes very easy to get the tiers of quarterbacks right. I think that that's been something that you and I have both been able to work on pretty well in the rankings contest over the last few years, Wyatt. But sometimes there's the late round guys. Sometimes there's a surprise. Sometimes there's just a mispriced player in the rankings. And so Wyatt and I are going to go through today and identify some players that are major targets for us, but also a couple players that maybe at ADP we're looking the other way. Of course, when you're in the best ball streets, there's the stacking component. You don't want zero of these players. For many cases, there's very rarely you want zero, because if a bad quarterback exists, he's probably getting a late ADP. So there's always someone at the right price or the right situation. But in general, in a vacuum, these players may be fades for us given their situations. And then Wyatt and I are also going to throw some deep cut later quarterbacks your way. Any comments about the quarterback position before we get into specific targets and fades tonight, Wyatt?
I think you are onto something where it's like starting to get easier kind of to like bucket QBs for fantasy year in and year out. I think we're getting much better at that, identifying the elites of the elites, because we're getting so many of these quarterbacks who are good passers and good runners. And it's very easy to say, okay, these guys are at the top. And then we have the middle class where it's like they're really good passers, maybe no rushing, or really good rushers, but really bad at the pass. And then, we have the back end where there's maybe just a lot of uncertainty with players. Rarely do we find the massive hits in the late rounds, like we used to be able to before, where it would be, Jane Daniels 10 years ago would not get drafted, as early as he was last year. He wouldn't have been drafted as a QB1, right? We would have been able to take him with our last pick in our redraft league and, gone to the bank with that. That doesn't happen anymore. So we're getting very, very good at identifying the quarterbacks and really bucketing them well.
Well, let's lead us off. Wyatt, hit us with your first target in the quarterback position. Also, spoiler, this was a player that I really wanted on my list, and I put on my list, and I said I didn't care, Wyatt.
But we're gonna tag team this one.
Yeah, we're gonna absolutely. This is Man and Machine going at it. Finally, something we agreed on. If you were watching Man versus Machine last week, why did I really got into it on some of these players? But this quarterback, we are both all in on. Wyatt, lead us in.
Yeah, so my first one is Caleb Williams, and something that's going to be in common between all three of the QBs I have here as targets is they're all QBs who I think are in a situation that greatly improved this offseason. And that's what happened for Caleb. They start off the offseason getting Ben Johnson in as head coach, which is a big deal. We all know, I don't have to go on and on about that. Then they trade for Joe Thuney. They start to bolster this offensive line. They go into the draft, add more weapons with Colston Loveland and Luther Burden. I think everything's there for Caleb, basically. We know that he has all the talent. Yes, he has some warts to him. He holds on the ball a little bit too long sometimes. He might make some bad decisions in the pocket from time to time. I think Ben Johnson's going to do a good job of making sure he doesn't do that, put him in the situations to not do that. And he's got all the weapons. He can run. I think we're going to see some regression for his rushing touchdowns. He had almost 500 rushing yards last year, no rushing touchdowns, which is pretty hard for a QB to do when you run that much. I think we're going to see a lot of fantasy points this year from him.
Yeah, there's lots of fantasy points. DJ Moore is still on this team. Cole Kmet still on this team. DeAndre Swift, a usable piece. So they're the stars of a line. The offensive line, as you mentioned, is bolstered. He gets all of the upgrades that we want to see from an ascending quarterback. He's got the pedigree, the draft capital. You mentioned the warts. One of the other warts is there's questions about his dog mentality.
Sure.
At least it's an eyebrow raise. I'm not going to go so far as to downgrade him because of, finger painted nail, nail. No, that's silliness. But
yeah,
there is some questions about how, his pedigree of winning, career wise, but that could shift given what we've seen from Ben Johnson. And maybe it's just a confidence thing in terms of you go in and you've got this coach who knows how to use you better. And there were reports that he was watching film last year by himself. And when you're a new quarterback to the league and not knowing how to watch film, that's a problem. So you've got, and now it's almost the other end of the spectrum where Ben Johnson is like, do you see these trick plays? Like, we're going to use, offensive linemen for some of these plays. Great. Fantastic. The creativity is there. And that's, the volume mentioned for the passing, but also volume of the rushing. You hit on it. He's mobile enough. He's not the Jalen Hurts, Justin Fields level, but the mobility is there. And I agree with you. The touchdown should come. So Caleb Williams, both Wyatt and I are in on Caleb for 2025.
Big time.
All right. I'll hit you with one, Wyatt. And this is another player that Derek Brown, he was very high on. He tweeted out a couple days ago. He's like, I don't think y'all are high enough on JJ McCarthy at quarterback 9. And I said, well, actually, he's my quarterback 7 in projections. And I'm very, very bullish on him. So he's a player that I'm targeting. His ADP is nowhere close to where it should be. He's quarterback 19 on Underdog, and a player that we saw what talent Sam Darnold was last year. He imploded from time to time. JJ McCarthy could do that. But we also saw Sam Darnold put up massive, massive games in a pass volume offense that is always a top 3 in the league. JJ McCarthy, the haters say he didn't get a lot of pass volume in college. Well, what offense was he with? He was with Jim Harbaugh in Michigan. There was no need for it. So now you go to a different offensive system. He's like a red shirt rookie, not really a rookie. He's been in this offense for a while. This is a player that has all of the weapons, the TJ Hawkinson, the Justin Jefferson, the Jordan Addison. Aaron Jones is still dynamic. So all of these players elevate the floor for a JJ McCarthy, and Sam Darnold was quarterback 9 last year. There were 3 games the entire regular season where Sam Darnold finished outside the top 20 of weekly quarterback finishes. 3 out of 17 games. So I'm no math guy, but quarterback 19, that's a floor for JJ McCarthy, not the ceiling. The ceiling is top 10, if not top 5 quarterback based on the pass volume, the talent surrounding him, the offensive system, and his talent. Like, he's a talented quarterback. He's mobile enough. He's recovered from his knee injury. So there's no concerns. He survived the off season with some of the quarterback eyebrow raises. I'm in on JJ McCarthy for 2025.
I'm not as aggressive as you are in with your projections, but I am in on JJ McCarthy for 2025. I think he's like a priority QB2 if you're in Superflex. In best ball, he's an ideal quarterback 2. Also, if you're going like a QB, like 3 QB strategy, he could be the first one you take in a strategy like that. He's got everything we want. We say this about those Minnesota teams with Kevin O'Connell. There's not everyone who's played quarterback for him has had success, and it doesn't really matter how good you are either. He's going to have a high pass rate over expected, because that's what Kevin O'Connell does.
Right.
Even with like Jaron Hall, they were still ripping it.
Yes.
So
the Pastronaut.
Yeah, like I have no like that's the beautiful thing about the Vikings is we have no doubts about this situation. We know that's amazing. It's one of the best in all of football and all of fantasy football. It's just a matter of JJ McCarthy, and I think JJ McCarthy's pretty talented. I like the point you brought up about him playing in Michigan. Like whatever Harbaugh did is not something I think we can hold up against him. Just because Harbaugh didn't want to pass doesn't mean that JJ McCarthy isn't a good passer. I think he has all the tools. He's shown what I think is one of the more important aspects is that he's really good over the middle of the field, which is an area of the field that a lot of quarterbacks just aren't comfortable in. And JJ McCarthy is completely comfortable throwing across the middle of the field. So yeah, I think he's in for a big year for the Vikings. I think really the only question is how much he'll actually run, because he is athletic, but we don't know if he'll actually run in the NFL. If he runs in the NFL, he could just be better than Sam Darnold was, which is obviously very, very good, because Sam Darnold was very good last year for fantasy at least. But that is possible. It's in his range of outcomes.
There we go. Man and machine also aligned on a bullish stance on JJ McCarthy. Wyatt, hit us with your next target here.
Drake Maye, been singing the praises ever since he was entering the NFL, because I think he's just supremely talented and has every physical tool you could ask for. He is in the Josh Allen, Justin Herbert archetypes of, big, strong arm, can put it anywhere on the field at any point, and is also really mobile. Last year, he was 9th in QB rushing, despite starting way less games than a lot of other QBs. In the games he started and finished, he had 17.1 points per game. In what is probably the worst situation that any rookie QB had, terrible offensive line, no weapons to speak of, and he was still making it happen. You look at some of his interceptions, and it's almost all just players letting the pass bounce off their hands. It's really frustrating for him. Like, he could have had a much better year than he even did last year. And then this offseason, what happens? His situation improves. They draft Will Campbell. They sign Stephon Diggs. They draft Kyle Williams. They draft Trevion Henderson. Like, they get him weapons. They help out his offensive line. We already know he's good. Like, the moon is the ceiling for Drake Maye this year. Like you said, like, you're really aggressive, like with your projection for JJ McCarthy. This is where like my projection is really aggressive with Drake Maye. Like, he is solidly in my top 10 projections. He's going as like QB 15, 16, 17. I'll happily wait to the end of my draft and redraft and take Drake Maye. And an underdog, I'm targeting Maye as much as I can to get him on my teams.
Yeah, Drake Maye right now, quarterback 15 right now in ADP. My one question, I'm hesitant to go all in on Drake Maye. I'm not convinced that they did enough from a pass catcher perspective. Like, I like the Henderson pick. I love the offensive line beef up. I think those were important moves to make. Is Diggs still good coming off the ACL? Like, yes, he's running against air right now and he looks fluid. Like, but will he be ready for week 1? Not just from a like, oh, I'm healthy perspective, but can I still play football past the age apex? I'm not sure yet. I'm still hesitant. And I'm not sure Kyle Williams is also the answer. But we could get the answer could be yes. I'm just not convinced at this point for the pass catcher upgrade. Was it enough? And now maybe the counter is, well, Josh Allen didn't have very much. Well, he got Stephon Diggs, right? Like, there was the answer, right? But much more prime Diggs is my wondering. So I'm not willing to go all in your in the right build. It's possible.
Hear me out. Okay. Now,
sure.
I hear you, because Stephon Diggs, Kyle Williams, like, obviously not the best weapons they could have had. We know that they were in on other wide receivers and they only got Diggs in free agency.
Right.
But you look at the bar that they're trying to beat from last year, and it's significantly better, even with just Stephon Diggs and Kyle Williams. Like, that is significantly better with it than what they had last year. And Drake Maye was good for fantasy with those weapons. So just having competent pass catchers is so big for them. Big for him. And he still has Hunter Henry, who I think is still a solid.
Such an indictment on Jalen Polk and Javon Baker.
I mean, come on. Is there a worse rookie performance than Jalen Polk? I mean, I don't know about you, but I had some Jalen Polk bags. I'm not gonna lie. I don't think anybody expected him to be that bad. But no, that's how bad it was.
When he came from Washington and got second round draft capital, and there was opportunity in New England, like, there were stars aligning for Jalen Polk, and then man, oh man, just
so bad.
So bad. He made Kayshon Boutte look like a superstar,
truly.
And you know what, Boutte, he's a bizarre one too, because he could be, he flashed at LSU. Like, his freshman year was,
oh yeah, he was like amazing. Supposed to be the man. And then there was some locker room stuff, right? There was definitely off the field stuff that derailed that. But he played. There were a couple spike weeks from Boutte as well last year, so that is very much an indictment on the picks that were made last year. There's something about oil and water, New England Patriots, and drafting wide receivers. So yeah.
Well, let's see here. The next target for me is Dak Prescott. The calculus is very simple for Dak. You bring back CeeDee Lamb, and you add George Pickens as a very, very good wide receiver too. Pickens, I feel like, has been a value even since the trade to Dallas. Like, yes, the value gap is closing and shrinking, but he's still a player that I'm targeting. And there's no other it's very consolidated target share, I anticipate. We've seen Dak have massive spike weeks and spike seasons when he's healthy. So I'm here for Dak Prescott. The running game is a major question. So if they move away from the running game and abandon it, which is possible given that, is it Javonte Williams? Is it Miles Sanders? Is it Jaden Blue? Is it anyone else? Maybe there's a free agent that they signed in the fall. The money balling that Dallas has been doing over the years may lead them to do something like that. So if the answer is not in the running game, it's in the passing game. And Ferguson is not really an answer in the tight end role, but he's like Dalton Schultz. Like they just hold a place. They're reliable enough. So Dak, I'm here for the downfield wins. And as long as he's healthy, he's a major target for me, even at quarterback 14.
Yeah, I'm digging the price. He's come up since the Pickens trade, which makes sense. I think he's up to like a more appropriate price, though. I still think he could probably come up a little bit and it'd still be fine. We talked about this on the wide receiver episode, which if anybody out there hasn't watched the wide receiver episode or the running back episode, make sure to go do that because I think they're really good. But the running back room, like you said, is terrible. Like they might have to pass at a very high rate out of necessity. And I think that their base level is going to be a higher pass rate to begin with anyways, because of that running back room and having Dak. Like the passing game is obviously the strength of this team. So why would you not lean into that? So yeah, I'm excited for Dak. I do think as he continues to rise, he's going to get to a point where I'm going to say like, okay, he's probably at the level where I'm not interested in drafting, or at least, I'm not specifically targeting him, but for now, I still think he's at a good price.
For sure. Here for Dak Prescott. Wyatt, hit us with your last target in the quarterback room.
Yes. Another QB who saw his situation improve is Trevor Lawrence. Liam Cohen coming over as head coach, I think is a massive deal for him after we saw what he did with the Buccaneers. Yes. I wish he would never have done that because that's all I can think about.
That's like terrible aura. Just like the vibes were bad.
Yeah. I know there's plenty of people out there who that first press conference we were like, I don't know, but okay. Anyways, so Liam Cohen is a big deal. Trading up for Travis Hunter is a big deal. Drafting Bashal Tutin is a big deal. They're providing weapons for Trevor Lawrence, and I expect the offensive system to be way better than it has in the past for Trevor Lawrence. And Lawrence is another one of these players. Like it's going in tune with all my other QB targets is that he runs some. He doesn't run as much as Maye or Williams, but he runs enough that we care that he does, right? Like it's not nothing that he runs. And I'm just really excited for this offense. And his price, he's cheaper than Dak Prescott. He's cheaper than all these quarterbacks we've talked about, basically. He's kind of in line with JJ McCarthy. They're around the same price. And really all these QBs are in what's really like the QB pocket at this point in drafts. Like you look on Underdog, you start getting to like the 9th to like the 12th round. Like that's where the QB pocket is, where we're starting to get like a lot of good prices on a lot of QBs who have high ceilings. And I kind of just want to always be attacking quarterbacks in that pocket. And Trevor Lawrence is one of them.
Yeah. It's such an easy tap when you've gone either Brian Thomas or Travis Hunter, because Thomas is going the 1-2 turn, and Hunter's now creeping into the late 30s for ADP. He's now becoming a 3-4 turn type of guy instead of 44, 50 overall, or he was in the 100s back when we were unsure he was going to play wide receiver. And now the draft capital fits there. Both downfield threats, both big play players. And Trevor Lawrence still has the draft capital pedigree. He still has that. He has struggled with injuries off and on, but you wonder if that's part of just not the system, but the team that was constructed around him that led to just degradation over time. Of he's run for his life, or he has to make wild throws because of bad plays or bad wide receiver routes, or because Christian Kirk struggled with injuries, Evan Ingram struggled. Like there have been players over time that, yes, it was just an issue for getting consistent wide receiver play from from the Jaguars, or even just consistent coaching. So Trevor Lawrence, I agree with you, better situation, up on the rise. And yeah, we're here for some Trevor Lawrence stacks. Jacksonville.
Yeah.
All right. One surprise, I left it off the show sheet just for Wyatt. This guy's a little later, but given the addition of a wide receiver to his room, I'm very excited to see Matthew Stafford. Like, one more year of Stafford. He has Puka Nacua. Sean McVay is still there. They're just going to run it back with Devontae Adams is now the addition. And Stafford reminds me, like, Rodgers and Stafford are very similar in how they hyper target their guys. And with Devontae Adams now in tow, Tyler Higbee is back. Or if you want Ferguson, like, there's also options. Kyron Williams is legit. Blake Corum could become a thing. There's a lot of options in this Rams offense, and he's late. Like, he's just a late target guy for me. You have to keep scrolling all the way to quarterback 24 at 160 overall, multiple rounds after even more than a round after Michael Penix, and this is a player who we've seen have 40 touchdowns in a season, 37 touchdowns in a season. So they're just running it back. I think it's a misprice on Matthew Stafford for where he could be. And yes, he doesn't have the legs. He doesn't manufacture fantasy points via rushing touchdowns or anything like that. He's going to have to be on the right side of variance with your passing touchdowns, but that exists with a Devontae Adams and Puka Nacua now in tow. So I'm targeting Stafford, especially because of his price.
I always toe the line between wanting to target Stafford and not, because he is one of these completely statue quarterbacks. So, like, he gets a lot of 250 and 2, which is like fine, but like not exciting. And because the Rams can be a pretty balanced team week to week, depending on the game, but they tend to be more balanced, and their defense honestly is pretty good, all things considered. They don't really have to be a pass heavy team, even though McVay will do it at times. So, like, I constantly think, like, yeah, he could be 4,500 yards and 40 touchdowns. And, like, that's someone I want. That's why I want to draft. And I'm like, but sometimes he could be like 3,900 yards and like 29 touchdowns. And it's like, okay, it's like fine, you don't mind.
Sure.
But like best ball, I definitely want to get exposure to it because of the stacking that you can do within the team of Puka, Adams, Stafford, like that stack. And even if you only stack him with just Puka or just Adams, like, they have serious one game potential between them. And like, we could see Stafford go on, a run of 3 touchdown games in a row to, like, in the fantasy playoffs. Like, that's not a crazy thing for him, So best ball, I'm definitely getting exposure to Stafford, especially because I like the prices for, Puka is obviously expensive, but I like Puka a lot. And I think the Adams price is good as well. Redraft, I don't know if I'm there.
That's fair. The contingency upside you mentioned for the Rams wide receivers, or at least hinted at, I think is massive too, because you look at Puka, who's dealt with injuries for various reasons over the course of the last couple seasons. And look, he goes away. That's a 25+% target share guy. Or Devontae Adams, who's on the wrong side of the age apex, but still crushing when he touches the ball. If either of those guys go down, like, that makes the contingency upside for either of those. Not just like Nacua is already a first round selection in most formats, but that moves him into that, like, top 3 conversation pretty easily. Or Devontae Adams becomes, if Nacua goes down and they don't replace him with anyone meaningful, let's say he tears an ACL at the beginning of the year, or heaven forbid, Devontae Adams becomes very interesting as like a round 2 player. That's kind of, I think, where his price should be if that happens. But you mentioned Stafford could just be Mr. Consistent and then have one big game, boom, and that's what we're looking for in best ball.
Yeah.
All right, very good. So those are our targets. We're going to do one fade each before we get to the commercial break. Wyatt, hit us with your biggest fade for the 2025 season.
Yeah, so my targets were all players who could run some, at least. And these are all players who are not going to be running very much. And my first one is CJ Stroud. We know he's actually pretty athletic and can do it, but he does not do it in the NFL. When he's scrambling, he's scrambling to throw. And we saw a really down year from CJ Stroud and the Texans offense in general last year. Some of that is due to play calling, I think. Some of that, or actually a lot of that, has to do with the offensive line being dreadful, which is probably going to be pretty bad again this year, which is tough. Part of me thinks, like, I don't know, was some of the play calling due to the fact that the offensive line was so bad that they didn't want to drop back and pass like 38 times a game, So maybe there's a little bit something to that. But I like the offensive weapons here for the Texans. I like CJ Stroud as a QB a lot. I think he's actually really talented. I'm just worried about what this offensive line is like. The fact that CJ Stroud doesn't run, how much will they pass? It's enough to make me worry about CJ Stroud's potential when he's going around a lot of the QBs we just got done talking about.
Yeah, he's not a quarterback that I'm targeting. I'll agree with you there. But for me, he's just not, he's like a even exposure guy.
Sure.
I think that the other concern I had from last year stemmed from the amount of injuries that the wide receivers suffered. Nico Collins missed a lot of time. Stephon Diggs missed a lot of time. Tank Dell was obviously not himself at the beginning of the season and then got injured at the end of the season. So there were significant wide receiver injuries, which may have led to the offensive line and the play calling all shifting as well. Like there's all domino effects that play a part in Houston not performing how we expected, especially like as a best ball bro, week 17, we were expecting Houston versus Baltimore, right? And it was the most like let down. Houston got shut out. Like it was so bad, Wyatt, so bad. From all of us wanted this to become one of the big shootout games, and it most certainly was not.
Yeah.
So that definitely left us with a sense of frustration. And Nico Collins is back, but do we believe in Jaden Higgins? Do we believe in Jalen Noel? I agree with you. I don't know if they did enough for the offensive line either. So there's concern there. They at least, they signed Nick Chubb as running back depth. So the offense doesn't really lose a step if Joe Mixon is out. Like that's how I view it. He's not going to move the needle positively, but if Mixon misses time, they're both like average to below efficient backs. Like it's not really going to move the needle down significantly if Mixon misses time. So that Houston offense, there's still a lot of questions that we have. And I think he's not a fade for me, but definitely not a player that I'm going on my way and saying, oh yeah, it's resolved. Like it's clearly better in Houston, like how you mentioned with Williams or Trevor Lawrence or Drake Maye. Like those teams went out of their way to improve multiple facets of their team. And I don't think Houston quite meets that threshold. Okay, great. One fade for me before we get to the break. And this is, again, a player that we talk about teams just not doing enough. I'm not convinced that Tennessee did enough for Cam Ward. And I know that Ward is like a later round guy. Right now he's quarterback 26 on Underdog, like late QB2. But I don't even see the pathway for spike weeks. Like even for the best ball bros, is it Xavier Restrepo? Like, is it DK? Like who is going to be? Obviously, Calvin Ridley is the wide receiver one there, but Van Jefferson is not going to be an answer. Like, there's not a pathway to see Cam Ward hit spike weeks that we want, and maybe why you see maybe a clearer pathway. It's just hard for me to have confidence in this team that like tried to piecemeal together later round offensive weapons for Ward when they could have just drafted a wide receiver in early round 2.
So I'm more in than out, but I'm not targeting Cam Ward necessarily. Part of that is just that we're so bad at saying who's going to be a good QB. And, I'm kind of willing to give some faith to any QB who goes number 1 overall, even though he's obviously not as good as many other number 1 overall QBs or QBs who went later than that, like last year. What have you probably been like QB 4, 5, 6 somewhere in last year's class, just to kind of put it in perspective. But the big question for me is, will Cam Ward run in the NFL? He has some athletic ability. He's shown at least the propensity to run near the goal line in college, not necessarily scramble a lot for a lot of yards, but he is athletic. So is he one of these QBs who gets to the NFL and he ends up scrambling a little bit more because what's around him is not really working? I'm going to bring up Josh Allen, and I'm not trying to compare him to Josh Allen. Okay, everybody, please. That's not what's happening. But Josh Allen's someone who in college didn't necessarily run a whole lot. He was athletic. He got to the NFL, and that's what we knew him as. So when he got to the NFL, was a running QB because his passing wasn't there yet. But he was athletic and he could move, so he was doing it. Is there maybe a little bit of that with Ward? And I'm kind of just open to that possibility. But you're right though. There's not a lot there for him weapon wise. Calvin Ridley's solid. We'll see about the rookies they drafted. I talked about last week how I like Alec Aomanor. He's getting some good reviews in camp, but that's still that doesn't mean all that much. I think they're going to rely on the run game a good bit, which is not a feather in his cap for fantasy.
Right.
But it can at least help the offense move a little bit. But yeah, I don't want to fade the number 1 overall pick. Basically, is where I'm at. I'm willing to be wrong about QBs that get drafted that highly.
Fair enough. A little bit of love for Tony Pollard and Taze Spears if they lean on the run game.
There we go.
Maybe Spears as how late he's going. All right. You like playing fantasy. We like playing fantasy on the FFPC. So let's hear from our sponsor.
Hey, why do we partner with the FFPC? Because they have the widest variety of fantasy football formats, and it's the easiest place to find all types of fantasy football contests in the world. What if you want to play for high stakes? Well, they have a $6 million prize pool with their Fantasy Players Championship. They also have way too early best ball leagues that start in February and dynasty leagues. They have the closest thing to a liquid market for orphans that there is in all of Dynasty. And the FFPC has sponsored us for half a decade because we are actually delivering information that can help fantasy gamers, and they're generating so much interest into bringing in so many new users, casual users even. The FFPC creates a unique experience where you can both compete against the best and make money. Use promo code UNDERWORLD to get $25 off your first team. $25 off your first team at the FFPC with promo code UNDERWORLD. Go get it!
Welcome back to Man versus Machine. Wyatt and Bradley here talking quarterbacks. We talked about our quarterback targets. Caleb Williams, Drake Maye, Trevor Lawrence, JJ McCarthy, Dak Prescott, Matthew Stafford, but we also are talking fades here. Wyatt, you brought up CJ Stroud. I brought up Cam Ward. Hit us with another fade for the people.
Jordan Love, who I think has good weapons. I know. I'm sorry, but it's going to happen. Good weapons, good offensive coach, good offensive line. I like getting Matthew Golden. I wasn't high on Matthew Golden necessarily, but I think he was a good pick for them and what they needed on that offense. But this is a team that wants to run. That they showed us this last year. They ran a lot, especially as the season moved forward. They really relied on Josh Jacobs, and Jordan Love's another one of these QBs who's not really going to run a whole lot. So what's the ceiling really? And I mean, when his first year as a starting QB was pretty exciting, threw a lot of touchdowns at a really high rate, and we knew that wasn't going to stay that way, and that came crashing down last year. Maybe he lives somewhere in the middle of those 2 years, but I don't think he's one of these highly efficient quarterbacks because he's a little wild out there. Okay, he's got some hubris with his arm, which, don't get me wrong, he's got one of the better arms in the NFL.
That can be fun.
Some of the throws he's made in the NFL are Patrick Mahomesian a little bit, where it's just back foot off kilter and just rifles it in the right spot. Don't get me wrong. But he also then trusts that arm a little bit too much in some bad situations too and gets himself into trouble. But yeah, the main things here is that I think it's going to be a more run heavy team than we'd like. and Jordan Love doesn't really run very much. So he's kind of, trying to thread a thin needle.
Yeah, he's one of those players that I was lower on than the consensus last year. Unfortunately, because I was, Packers fan. Yeah, go Pack Go. That's the reality here. But no love for love was kind of the mantra last year, and it panned out. But one of the things that I struggled with was how much did that calf injury impact not only his throwing, but also the Packers game plan moving forward, because they got punched in the mouth. Not just at week 1 when they went down to Brazil with Philly, and it was a close game, and Jordan Love suffers this calf injury that just continued to linger throughout the season. And then you saw just a significant shift away from what we had seen in previous years, which was a little more volume and a little higher pace of play, to just like run the ball into the ground with Josh Jacobs. Like, this is the guy. This is the running back is going to handle the majority of our carries. And yes, Wilson and other players were involved behind him, but yeah, it's hard. I agree with you. I think seeing Love as more of a middle player with the occasional spike week, I think the Matthew Golden addition was necessary, knowing that Christian Watson is going to be out for the majority, if not the entire season, due to the ACL. And they need a guy who can stretch the field. That's what Watson was really good at doing. Just run big boy down the field. Like, maybe you'll catch it and then you might have a 115-yard game. But they needed a player like that to run the offense that they want. The other part is that there were a lot of broken plays last year. So I wonder if the Packers try to continue to lean into that type of efficiency. Just think about Tucker Kraft time and again, just left wide open because everyone else was covered. So I hear you on the Jordan Love, not necessarily a target for me either, but if you get some late Packers stacks, like it makes Golden's going too late in best ball, in my opinion. You've got other players who are just going late in the wide receiver 40s or beyond. Romeo Doubs is going to be a starter. You've got those players. So I could see him as like a value click with other stackable pieces, but not someone I'm going out of my way either, given the pace of play you mentioned and the possibility, the probability that they stay very run heavy. So I hear you.
Yeah, I mean, the calf injury is a good point. It is possible that literally, stopped the offense from running the way that Matt LaFleur wanted it to be. I'm not sure how much of that's true. Like, I'm sure that's at least part of it, right? But I think Matt LaFleur is somebody who we've seen wants to run the ball a lot to begin with. So I think that's kind of his base level anyways.
All right, another fade. A third year in a row, I'm fading Patrick Mahomes, Wyatt. Matt Nagy is still the offensive coordinator. I think that's the calculus there. There's a good enough talent on this offense. Rashee Rice looks to be healthy and on his way. Xavier Worthy looks like a Deshaun Jackson type, big playability. Occasionally we'll get some big targets. Travis Kelce's on his way down, so the efficiency isn't there. But I don't see a pathway for Mahomes to give you quarterback 6, because that's his ADP right now, is quarterback 6, as long as the offensive coordinator Matt Nagy is still there. We haven't seen Mahomes unlock since Bieniemy. So I'm sorry, guys. Like, it's fun. Mahomes is still arguably the best quarterback in the NFL from a quarterbacking perspective, but for fantasy, I've been right 2 years in a row. I'm not going to be wrong this year, Wyatt.
Man, Mahomes is so tough because we know he's the best quarterback, right? Like, well, him and Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. You can argue whichever one you think is the best quarterback in the NFL. I won't really have a strong stance either way. I think Mahomes is the best actual quarterback for the NFL, but he hasn't been there for fantasy for us. And I think a lot of that is just the way the offense has been working the last couple of years. Now, I think the light at the end of the tunnel, if you are in on Mahomes, which I'm a little bit like, I want some exposure. He's probably going to be like, best ball. He's going to be an 8% exposure quarterback for me. Like, I want to make sure I have some, because they've been able to kind of coast by on this division for the most part. Now this division's getting pretty good. Is it possible this year they can't? And they're really fighting for this division, and they kind of have to go out for it, on offense and put up some points. Will that, light a fire underneath the Chiefs offense, for 2025? I think that's possible, right? And, Xavier Worthy, Rashee Rice, healthy together with Xavier Worthy having a year under his belt. I know Kelsey is getting up there and it's looking rough, but Worthy and Rice are both pretty exciting to me. Maybe that's enough that like this offense is able to get going. So I'm not fading Mahomes, but I'm not targeting him either. I'm just kind of, trying to be level with the crowd on Mahomes.
All right. Level with Mahomes. There we go. Title of the podcast, Level with Mahomes. All right. Hit us with your last fade here, Wyatt.
Another quarterback who does not run, Tua Tagovailoa. He should never run again because every time he does, he gets concussed. Unfortunately, he's had trouble with this. And even if I can throw all that out and I still don't want to draft Tua. He's always faded at the ends of seasons, even when he's healthy. It's kind of part of the Miami offense, it seems like. Mike McDaniel, his offense does some really exciting things, but it seems to never last throughout the entire year. Some of that I think is honestly the cold weather, which is like a dumb thing. It should not actually hurt offenses, but it's kind of true for the Dolphins. You just look at like how they've performed in the winter months. It's been worse. They're always better at the beginning of the season. So Tua is someone who can start off hot, but he's not someone I want to rely on throughout the season. I don't have any confidence that the offense can stay at the peaks that they've shown throughout an entire season. I don't think Tua can through an entire season because of the offense craters. And all that is before he's a concussion away from ending his career at any point, which sucks. Like I hate that for Tua. It's been seriously unlucky for him that that's happened the way it has, but it has, unfortunately. And he seems to be more susceptible to them, whether that's because the previous ones are not, or he's just his body composition, whatever it is. Unfortunately, that's the way it is.
Yeah, we've been pretty low on Miami overall in some of these discussions. Low on Tyreek Hill, low on Achane, low on Jalen Wright, low on like this overall Miami offense, and Tua being part of that. It's just the entire market. You mentioned the concussions, the fading near the end of the year, whether it is the weather or whether teams just figure out McDaniel's plays by the end of the season too. Like what functions well for Miami can get figured out. And there's still there's spike week potential, no doubt, for Tua, but in startings, he's like one of those tweeners. He's not like, even if you're in a redraft league, like where he's going right now is quarterback 22. So he's a tweener. Like he's not a quarterback one. The pathway for him to be your starting quarterback means you've passed on so many other potentials. But we know what Tua is, though. At this point, we know what he is. We don't know necessarily what JJ McCarthy is. We have projections and we have like environment and we have historical data to support like those types of reasonings. But we know what Tua is, and his floor is a 0, and his ceiling is really dependent upon ultimately Tyreek Hill, right? Like whether he's going to get 300 passing yards is whether Tyreek Hill can bust 2 big plays for him. So the floor is very low for Tua, which I hear you. Not a player that I'm going after.
Yeah, not interested.
Last fade, Jared Goff. You lose your offensive coordinator. Your wide receiver 1 undergoes knee surgery this offseason, very underreported. Nobody really knew. Amon-Ra went through that. We know he's a warrior. We know Amon-Ra's a warrior. And the Lions lost a little bit on their offensive line. Ragnow is retired. There's just the pathway for Goff to meet that. Like he's being drafted now at quarterback 13. I mentioned Prescott after Goff. You mentioned Maye. I mean, Trevor Lawrence, JJ McCarthy. The pathway for them to clear the way is very high. Goff, though, is not a rushing quarterback, so he doesn't get it with his legs. And you're looking for hyper efficiency, which the coaching staff is gone. So you're hoping that it just comes down to a couple Jameson Williams big plays, or maybe a really nice Jahmyr Gibbs dump off from a fantasy perspective. That's not going to get it done consistently for a fantasy for how I have the projection set up. His expected touchdowns every year is very low compared to where he actually finishes. So I'm concerned that the shifts this offseason, you talk about teams improving this offseason. I'm not convinced that the Lions improve this offseason. And then you also have the Lions having a difficult schedule this year, given how good they've been over the last couple of years. So I'm concerned, Wyatt, and we've seen Jared Goff become a zero, become, a snowman out there just before. We've seen it. So I'm fading Jared Goff. The Lions overall have been a soft fade for me this offseason.
I think we're buying a little bit of his 2024 with his current ADP, which in 2024, he took like a big step up in efficiency from where he's been with the Lions. For as good as the offense has been, and Goff has been good for that offense, his efficiency as a passer and a QB was just good, not great. Last year it was great. And I'm not sure we're going to get that again. I think we're going to be closer to the couple years prior, where we were getting somewhere in like the 17.5 point per game range, something like that, which is fine, but like then we're drafting him at a ceiling. So I don't really want to do that.
No, don't draft players at their ceiling, and especially one that is like quarterback 13. So like you could still be hunting for quarterback 1 at that point. Might as well just wait and get value.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of values, Wyatt and I are going to bring you just some quick hitting deep cuts here at quarterback. Players who go pretty late, usually outside the top 20 of quarterbacks. Some of the targets that we've brought up have been outside the top 20. Some fades have been outside the top 20, but these are players that are going late that we should be considering. So Wyatt, hit us with a deep cut here.
First one is Geno Smith, which if you watched the wide receiver episode last week, we got into his wide receiver core a bit because this team is good. This offense looks good the way it's constructed right now. They look like they got a real wide receiver core. They got Brock Bowers. They got Ashton Genty. The offensive staff is one that you like because Chip Kelly runs a fast-paced offense in the NFL. What's not to like here? And Geno Smith, we've seen high performances from him before. I think this might be the best offensive system he's been in now. So I think there's a good reason to believe that Geno Smith could potentially get back into that streaming QB territory for us this year. So he's a priority QB2 in Superflex leagues for me. He's a QB who I'm definitely targeting in best ball on Underdog. His price there, I think, is honestly just fantastic. He goes around pick 166. I think I'm like dead on that because I've drafted a lot of him. So I kind of just know where he's getting drafted. And I think like one QB leagues, like there's a possibility you're just going to be able to roll with Geno Smith for periods of time, if not for a long period of time, once we get going in the season.
Love it. Love it. Geno Smith has a special place in my heart. Back July 15th of 2022, I pulled up the tweet for you, Wyatt. Here we go.
Let's hear it.
This is it. For 2021, Smith was quarterback 16 in PFF pass grade, just behind Mahomes, Ryan, and Carr. Smith was QB6 in NFL passer rating in 2021. The 5 better at that time: Aaron Rodgers, Joe Burrow, Matthew Stafford, Russell Wilson, Kirk Cousins. Like, that was good company back then. Mm-hmm. Smith was among quarterbacks with at least 110 dropbacks that year for 2021. Highest adjusted completion percentage, 6th lowest turnover worthy play rate, QB3 in big time throw rate, and QB12 in yards per attempt. So the efficiency metrics have followed him for years. He's been a pretty efficient quarterback when he's not been on bad teams or bad offenses or bad play callers. Like last year, we like Grubb, I think, got shafted a little bit. I think there were times where he was overruled as an offensive coordinator, and that's one of the reasons why he was let go, because they were like, well, we don't need Ryan Grubb, which was I think, a mistake. But nevertheless, Geno Smith, now you mentioned the weapons, the efficiency, the pace of play. The stars are aligning for Geno Smith to become, a very interesting high priority QB2. So he can run enough. He's not a zero. He's not a statue, but a player that, oh, by the way, it was one of these tweets was retweeted by Geno himself. So we're here. We're here for it. Shout out Geno Smith. We love you. So special place in my heart. I'm so glad, Wyatt, that you put Geno Smith on this list.
Yeah, love it.
A deep cut for me, Daniel Jones. And this is not because I think he's good at football. I think it's because like let's just get this for the opposite. Like Daniel Jones is the opposite of Patrick Mahomes in so far as not sure he's good at real NFL football, but pretty sure that he could be very usable for fantasy. It is he's always been one of those spike week kings. You get a lot of rushing with him. Shane Steichen, that offense is one that they wanted Anthony Richardson to work, and Richardson is still dealing with injuries. His body can't even make it through the preseason, Wyatt. So now you've got Daniel Jones, who is a better passer than Anthony Richardson, can get the ball to Josh Downs, Michael Pittman. You've got, your tight end in Warren now. You've got a few pieces that are interesting. Alec Pierce is your deep threat. Darius Slayton was a thing from time to time, week to week. No, he's not consistent. No, it's not. He's not a winning quarterback for real NFL, but the rushing is there and he's more efficient than the other options. And he's got enough weapons. Jonathan Taylor is a good running back that can keep defenses honest. So I like Daniel Jones at his price. He's going, you got to keep scrolling down here. Quarterback 30.
Scroll for a while,
right? Yeah, he's quarterback 30. So he's almost free for you, especially if you're like, I want to punt quarterback or I want to take a shot at a guy who can give me spike weeks. This is like, yes, we want Anthony Richardson to be a thing. Daniel Jones has shown spike weeks in the past. I'm here for Daniel Jones given some life for your fantasy team.
I think Jones is a perfectly reasonable quarterback to draft when you're going like a 3 QB strategy on Underdog. I don't know if I want to rely on him as like just my pure second QB, although there is a possibility he starts every game for the Colts this year. It's possible that Anthony Richardson doesn't play another game for the Colts. This shoulder injury sounds like it's kind of a big deal to me. But yeah, we have like proof of concept that Daniel Jones will just already work in this team because he's kind of a dink and dunker as a passer. Well, and that's kind of what Gardner Minshew did for them in the past. And Gardner Minshew had some success there, but then we know he can run, and we know that they already have those run packages like installed in the offense because of Anthony Richardson. So he can kind of just like do like somewhere in between those two. But like a little bit better of a passer than Minshew, a little bit worse of a runner as Richardson. And that can get you 16 points per game or something like that, which is great when you take him as late as you do.
Great. Give us one last deep cut there, Wyatt.
Jaxson Dart, who this is a obviously very deep down in there, scrolling past Daniel Jones even. And
not too far. He's quarterback 32 right now.
Fair enough. But he is definitely someone who is a QB for these 3 QB rooms. Maybe in some super flex leagues, you can take him as a QB3. In 1 QB leagues, I do think you should actually be monitoring, not drafting him, but just monitoring him for when he starts, because Jaxson Dart is an aggressive passer. He likes to attack down the field, and he's a willing scrambler. He ran for over 500 yards each year that he was a starter in college. We already know that's part of his game. His offensive system in college was 1-2 reads and then run. And I have to imagine that's exactly what Brian Dable is going to do with him because, well, they've got Malik Neighbors, some running backs, and then what on that offense? So if I'm him, I'm going to do the exact same thing with Dart. Throw it to Malik Neighbors. If he's not open, check it down. If that's not looking open, go ahead and run. And it might not be pretty. I like Jaxson Dart as a prospect. I actually think he's going to have success in the NFL. I think he'll start faster than people think too, because the Giants have a rough schedule to start the season, and they're going to lose some games. This is a bad team. They're going to lose some games, and then there's no reason to keep Dart on the bench. So Dart's going to start sometime, and I think it's going to be earlier than later. And I think he's going to be all right for fantasy because he's going to run and he's going to be aggressive as a passer. So that's a pretty nice thing to have when you can get him as late as you can. In best ball drafts, like I said, in Superflex leagues, he could be your QB3 to try and get some potential. And then in 1 QB leagues, I do think there's reason to believe that he could be a streaming quarterback at some point in the season because of his running.
Yeah, the scramble plus a very good wide receiver. There's the calculus. That's the math. It's very simple. The math is very simple for Jaxson Dart. The last player that's deep cut for me, he flashed near the end of the season last year. Quarterback 23 right now is Bryce Young. The addition of Tet McMillan. There's your answer. Yes, Adam Thielen is a nice piece, and Jalen Coker is a nice piece, and Xavier Leggette's a nice piece, but then you add Tet. You add a Drake London type of player, whether it's a one-to-one, it doesn't matter. Like, you get your alpha, you get your guy, you get your X receiver, and Chuba Hubbard's good enough. And this is now year 2 of a Dave Canales offense where we've seen Bryce Young have big spike weeks. And this is also a division where they can get into shootouts with Tampa and Atlanta. You've got the pathway for major scoring opportunities. So Bryce Young, very late, is a quarterback that I'm targeting, Wyatt.
Yeah, I think he's one where it's like I'm legit excited for him. What we saw in the second half of 2024 was really exciting. He looked poised. He looked like who he was in college. Like the game was no longer big for him. Like it just seemed to click, which sometimes it just happens like that for players in the NFL. Like he just was making all the throws. He was scrambling. He was running a lot. Like we got a lot of running production from him, which if that continues into 2025, like we're looking at serious ceiling from Bryce Young as well. I'm legit just excited for him.
Absolutely. Bryce Young, Jaxson Dart, we're here for all of it. And we know y'all have been here for us. Man versus Machine, Wyatt and Bradley. Make sure you're following Wyatt on the X Machine at WyattB_FF. You can follow me at FF Stalder on the Player Profiler Now Plus Network. Click the like, click the subscribe button. Do it, people. Man versus Machine, Bradley, Wyatt. Until next time, everyone, good luck in the fantasy football streets.